You know, after 20-something years of taking care of folks with arthritis, there's one question I hear more than almost anything else. A patient will sit right across from me. Sometimes they've just gotten a new diagnosis. Sometimes they've been dealing with stiff, achy joints for years. And they'll lean forward and say, "Doc, is there anything I can eat that'll actually help?" And I love that question. I really do. Because it tells me that person is ready to do something about it. They're not just waiting for the next prescription. They want to take some control back. So here's my honest answer, and I wish more doctors would say this out loud. Yes, what you eat absolutely matters when it comes to arthritis. Now, let me be clear before we go any further. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that blueberries will replace your medication. That's not how this works. If your doctor has you on a treatment plan, you stay on that plan. We're not throwing anything out. But here's what I've seen, over and over and over again in my practice. When patients start making smart, simple changes to what they eat, they often feel a real difference. Less morning stiffness, a little more mobility, sometimes even a reduction in the medications they need, with their doctor's guidance, of course. Food is not magic, but it is medicine, the quiet, slow, everyday kind. So today, I want to share with you the 5 specific foods I find myself recommending to nearly every arthritis patient who walks into my office. These aren't trendy superfoods you can only find at some specialty store. These are simple, affordable, practical things you can pick up at any grocery store this week. For each one, I'll tell you why it helps, how to actually work it into your meals without turning your whole kitchen upside down, and a couple of things to watch out for. Sound good? Let's get into it. Number 1, and this is probably the single most important food on the list, is fatty fish. I'm talking about salmon, sardines, mackerel, herring, anchovies, the oily ones. The ones your grandmother probably told you were good for you. Well, she was right. Here's why. These fish are loaded with omega-3 fatty acids, specifically 2 types called EPA and DHA. Now, I'm not going to bore you with a biochemistry lecture, but here's what you need to know. These omega-3s work at the cellular level to calm down inflammation, and inflammation is the engine that drives arthritis pain. Whether you've got osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, or gout, inflammation is what makes your joints hot, swollen, and stiff. Think of omega-3s as a gentle brake pedal on that engine. I had a patient, a retired postal worker, 67 years old, lovely man, came to me with terrible morning stiffness in his hands and knees. He could barely make a fist before 10 in the morning. We had him on medication, which helped, but he wanted to do more. So I asked him to try eating fish 2 or 3 times a week. Nothing fancy. Canned salmon on toast. A tin of sardines with some crackers for lunch. 6 weeks later, he told me, and I'll never forget this, he said, "Doc, my hands work before my coffee's ready now." That's not a miracle. That's food doing its job over time. Now, here's a practical tip, because I know a lot of people hear salmon and they think of a $20 fillet at the fish counter. You do not need that. Canned sardines, canned salmon, canned mackerel, they're $2, $3 a can, they're already cooked, and nutritionally, they're just as good. Some studies suggest they're even better because you're eating the soft bones too, which gives you extra calcium. One thing I do need to mention, if you are on a blood thinner like warfarin or even aspirin therapy, talk to your doctor before significantly increasing your fish intake. Omega-3s can have a mild blood thinning effect on their own, and we want to make sure everything's balanced. But for most of my patients, fish is food number 1, bar none. Number 2, berries. And I'm going to include tart cherries in this group because they belong right here. Blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, and especially tart cherries. These little fruits are packed with compounds called anthocyanins. Those are the pigments that give berries their deep red, blue, and purple colors. And they happen to be some of the most powerful antioxidants found in food. What do antioxidants do for arthritis? In simple terms, they help clean up the damage that inflammation leaves behind in your joints. They also help lower something we measure in blood tests called CRP, C-reactive protein, which is one of the markers we use to track how much inflammation is going on in your body. Now, tart cherries deserve a special mention. There's been some really interesting research on tart cherry juice specifically for both gout and osteoarthritis. Several studies have shown that people who drank tart cherry juice regularly had fewer gout flares and reported less joint pain overall. I often tell my patients, if you're only going to add one fruit to your routine, make it a handful of berries or a small glass of tart cherry juice in the morning. That's it. That's the whole assignment. And here's a money-saving tip that I give everyone. Buy them frozen. Frozen berries are picked and frozen at peak ripeness, so the nutrition is locked in. They're cheaper than fresh, they last for months, and you can throw them in a smoothie, stir them into oatmeal, or just eat them straight out of the bag. One thing to watch, and this is important, if you go the cherry juice route, check the label. You want tart cherry juice, not cherry cocktail. A lot of products on the shelf have added sugar, and sugar is something we're going to talk about in a minute because it actually makes inflammation worse. So look for 100% tart cherry juice or no added sugar on the bottle. Number 3, dark leafy greens. Spinach, kale, collard greens, Swiss chard, bok choy. Now, I can already see some of you making a face. Stay with me. These greens are nutritional powerhouses for people with arthritis, and here's why. They're rich in vitamin K, which plays a role in maintaining healthy cartilage. That's the cushion between your bones. They contain a compound called sulforaphane, especially in the cruciferous ones like kale, which has been shown in lab studies to actually slow cartilage destruction. And they're loaded with fiber. Now, you might be wondering, what does fiber have to do with my knee? More than you think. There's growing evidence that your gut health, the balance of bacteria in your digestive system, has a direct connection to the level of inflammation throughout your body, including your joints. When your gut is healthy, it helps keep inflammation in check. And fiber is the #1 fuel for a healthy gut. So when you eat a big serving of spinach, you're not just feeding yourself, you're feeding the good bacteria that help protect your joints. I know that sounds a little strange, but the science on the gut-joint connection is getting stronger every year. Here's the thing I always tell my patients. You do not have to eat salad. I say this because the moment I mention leafy greens, people picture themselves chewing through a big bowl of raw kale, and that's the end of the conversation. No, you can saute spinach with a little garlic and olive oil. Takes 3 minutes. You can throw a handful of greens into a soup, a stew, an omelette. You can blend spinach into a fruit smoothie and honestly, not even taste it. The goal is to get them in. How you get them in is up to you. Now, important safety note, and I bring this up with patients all the time. If you're taking warfarin, which is a common blood thinner, vitamin K affects how that drug works. But here's what a lot of people get wrong. The answer is not to avoid greens. The answer is to eat a consistent amount so your doctor can adjust your dose accordingly. Talk to your physician about this. Don't just cut out vegetables. That's not the answer. Number 4, extra virgin olive oil. And I want to emphasize the extra virgin part, because that matters. This one is fascinating. Extra virgin olive oil contains a compound called oleocanthal, and researchers discovered something remarkable about it. Oleocanthal works through the same anti-inflammatory pathway as ibuprofen. Yes, the same mechanism. Now, you'd need to drink a whole lot of olive oil to get the equivalent of an Advil tablet. So, I'm not saying throw away your medicine cabinet. But when you use it consistently, day after day, week after week, those small anti-inflammatory effects add up. And here's the other side of this. It's not just about what olive oil gives you. It's about what it replaces. A lot of the cooking oils people use every day, corn oil, soybean oil, generic vegetable oil, are high in omega-6 fatty acids. Now, omega-6 isn't evil. Your body needs some. But the typical American diet has way too much of it. And excess omega-6 promotes inflammation. So when you swap out that bottle of vegetable oil and start cooking with extra virgin olive oil instead, you're making a 2-for-1 trade. Less of the stuff that fuels inflammation, more of the stuff that fights it. I recommend about 2 to 3 tablespoons a day. Drizzle it on your salad. Use it to sauté those greens we just talked about. Dip some whole grain bread in it. You can cook with it at low to medium heat. It's perfect for that. One thing to keep in mind, olive oil is calorie dense. About 120 calories per tablespoon. So the key is to use it as a replacement for other fats, not in addition to them. We're swapping, not stacking. This is especially important if you're working on your weight, which, as we'll talk about in a second, is one of the biggest things you can do for your joints. Number 5, and this is the one I think people underestimate the most: beans, nuts, and legumes. Walnuts, almonds, lentils, chickpeas, black beans, kidney beans. These foods are doing about 3 important things at once for your joints. First, they're great sources of plant-based protein with anti-inflammatory properties. Unlike red meat, which in large amounts can increase certain inflammatory markers, plant proteins tend to have the opposite effect. Second, they're packed with fiber. And we already talked about why fiber matters for gut health and inflammation. Third, and this is the big one, they help with weight management. And I need to be really direct with you about this because it might be the most important thing I say in this entire video. Carrying extra weight is the single biggest modifiable risk factor for knee osteoarthritis. Every single pound of body weight puts roughly 4 pounds of pressure on your knee joints. So if someone loses just 10 pounds, that's 40 pounds of pressure taken off their knees with every step they take. That is enormous. Beans, lentils, and nuts are incredibly satisfying foods. They keep you full. They stabilize your blood sugar. They give you sustained energy. And when you're full and satisfied after a meal, you're a lot less likely to reach for the chips, the cookies, the processed snacks that drive inflammation and weight gain. A practical way to get started. Swap out your afternoon snack. Instead of crackers or a granola bar, grab a small handful of walnuts or almonds, about an ounce, which fits in the palm of your hand. For dinner, try adding a can of chickpeas or lentils to a soup or stew you already make. You don't need a new recipe, just add them in. If you're not used to eating a lot of fiber, start slowly. Your digestive system needs time to adjust. Add a little more each week, drink plenty of water, and within a couple of weeks, your body will thank you. Now, before we wrap up, I want to give you a quick bonus, because every time I talk about what to add, patients inevitably ask me, "Okay, doc, but what should I stop eating?" And my answer is always the same. If you're going to cut back on one thing, make it added sugar and heavily processed foods. Sugar, the refined kind you find in sodas, candy, pastries, and a surprising number of healthy foods like flavored yogurts and granola bars, triggers an inflammatory response in the body. Studies have shown that people who consume high amounts of added sugar have higher levels of inflammatory markers in their blood. For someone with arthritis, that's like pouring gasoline on a fire that's already burning. Now, I am not telling you to never eat a cookie again. I'm a realist. I've been doing this for 20 years. If I told every patient to give up all sugar forever, they'd smile, nod, and absolutely nothing would change. What I do say is this: try to be aware of it. Read labels. Notice where sugar is sneaking into your day. And when you can, swap it for something from our list today. Here's what's beautiful about this approach, and this is the mindset I want you to walk away with. When you start filling your plate with fish, berries, greens, olive oil, and beans, there's naturally less room for the processed stuff. You don't have to fight it with willpower. You just crowd it out with better options. Addition, not subtraction. That's the strategy. All right, let's bring it all together. 5 foods. That's what I'm asking you to think about. 1. Fatty fish, especially salmon and sardines. 2. Berries and tart cherries. 3. Dark leafy greens. 4. Extra virgin olive oil. 5. Beans, nuts, and legumes. You don't have to do all 5 at once. In fact, please don't. That's how people burn out and give up by Thursday. Pick one, just one, and add it to your meals this week. Maybe you throw some frozen blueberries on your breakfast cereal tomorrow morning. Maybe you grab a can of sardines next time you're at the store. Maybe you swap out your vegetable oil for olive oil tonight. Small steps, consistent steps. That's how real change happens, in my practice and in life. And please, whatever you do, keep working with your doctor. These foods are partners to your medical treatment, not replacements for it. If you're on medication, stay on it unless your physician tells you otherwise. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, which one of these 5 are you going to try first? I read the comments, and honestly, hearing from you all is one of the best parts of doing this. If you found this helpful, give it a thumbs up. It really does help other people find this video. And if you want more practical, no-nonsense health information for the years ahead, hit that subscribe button. I've got a video coming up on the foods that actually make arthritis worse, and trust me, there are a few surprises on that list. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.